Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Beyond the Surface. Today we go beyond the surface with Trillium Rose. Trillium is the head director of instruction here at Woodmont Country Club, and we're excited to go beyond the surface. So Trillium, the way this is going to work is I'm going to ask you a bunch of different preferences, and you're just going to provide what you prefer, one or the other.
Sounds
ready
good
to go?
to me. I'm ready.
Sweet. So the first one is, do you prefer preparing or performing?
Okay, so I could answer that in a couple ways. Do I prefer preparing or performing as an athlete or as a coach? So should I?
Let's do it as a coach.
Okay, so preparing for me.
Why?
Because that's what performing really is built upon. And so if we're just focused on the performance, we don't really, it's like the shell. We're not really looking at what happens inside. Or it's like just saying, I like the cover of a book, but I don't really care what's inside that book. So there's so many different facets to performance that I think if you don't love the whole package, which is preparing, then you're not really getting the whole concept.
Would you have answered that differently as an athlete?
Personally, no, because I love sport. I love playing sports, and I love sweating, and I love, I love the kind of the struggle, and I love the climb, and I love feeling like there's another level I'm trying to get to, and so I think doing well is only as good as I know I've earned it, right? So I would rather play against a team I know that's really tough and beat them by 1 than an easy team and beat them by 20.
And just to give a little background on yourself, so I know you played a lot of sports growing up. Talk about which sports you competed in, and then how you ended up in this world, which is the golf community.
Okay, I'll try to keep this one fast.
Okay.
So I grew up loving sports because I grew up in a family of athletes, more or less in Vermont. So we had a lot of stuff outside. You basically have to be outside a lot if you live in Vermont. And they're pretty extreme seasons. So I played hockey in the winter, ice hockey. And
Were there a lot of women that played ice hockey? Girls?
There's a lot of women who play ice hockey in Vermont. And then I went to high school and I played ice hockey in high school. So we had a pretty strong team. There were a couple of girls that went on to play in the Olympics. Oh. So ice hockey for me was just something that was always there, and it was something that we just did. And I also skied, so skiing was just for fun, but I didn't compete. That was just more or less a fun thing to do. And before that, it was gymnastics. So gymnastics is also kind of a winter sport. So when I was a much younger girl, gymnastics was something I think that it really laid a good foundation for stretching and strength training and balance and mental preparation and form. And I think for a lot of sports, if you were the only one performing, like maybe singles tennis or in golf, gymnastics is a nice way to set things up. So gymnastics was up until high school, but then lacrosse kind of took over for me. So lacrosse, and when I answered that question, I realized I answered in a lacrosse lens, not in a golf lens, which is sort of funny.
That is interesting. So lacrosse, ice hockey, gymnastics, skiing. When did golf come into the picture?
So golf came in early. Golf might have been one of the earliest because my dad loved it. And so I just wanted to hang with my dad. And he played, and he would just bring me along. So he wasn't so much about wanting to teach me how to play. It was more about him having fun, playing himself, and I was just along for the ride. And so I think my earliest memories were just of him, him having fun and having fun with us. And I don't think I felt the pressure to do well. And I think I reflect on that a lot as a coach now, when I think how different would my perspective have been if he had just been sitting there watching me grind it out, or if he had been sitting on the range saying, do this, that, and the other thing, which he never did.
But you see that now with a lot of the golfers I'm sure you work with.
A lot of different ways to skin the cat. Right. And so I didn't grow up with someone who said, this is how you're going to play, right, or this is what we're supposed to do. And we played a lot of games. So golf growing up for me was a game was about games. You know, like you get a point for hitting the green, or you get a point for getting over the rock, or closest to the pin gets a point. And yeah, and it wasn't the score at the end of the day so much as, all right, how much can you make every shot matter, and how much fun can we have with every shot?
So I think this will answer our next preference, which is, do you prefer coaching golfers who are yes ma'am or why golfers?
Oh man, you're gonna ask some hard questions,
I'm gonna ask
aren't
some
you?
difficult preferences.
Oh man, yes ma'am or why? So you know what? I've got great players that answer both of those ways, and I think I won't say it's two different animals, but there are certainly two different ways to look at things.
If you were to pick one, which would you go with? As a coach, which one would you rather have?
This is maybe the why.
Okay.
You know, I do like when people are curious and they want to kind of dig deep a little bit. I also appreciate the ones that say, I don't care why, I just want to get better.
So we're going to have to get you to go on one side of the aisle. This is like politics. You have to either be on the left or the right. So that leads to the next question, which is, do you prefer a system, a way of doing things, or autonomy, sort of freedom and free-flowing way of doing things?
So as a coach, I like a system.
Okay.
I'm a systematic person. I think I've created systems for myself, just to make order and to make myself really organized so I don't let anything fall through the cracks. So that being said, I also think there are so many ways we need to look at things that if we just have one simple outline that we're stamping on everybody, we may not be looking at the whole picture that works for that person.
It's interesting because before we came on, we were talking a little bit, and you said, you're talking about your family and your dad being an architect and your mom being an artist. And you said they're both creatives.
Yeah.
But they're different creatives, right? An architect, I would think, has a systematic way of doing things and lines and structure, whereas an artist, it's probably a little more free-flowing. So I'm curious how that dynamic has played a role in the way you interpret the world and the way you look at the world.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
You really nailed it. And I think I'd like to say I took the best of both perspectives. Yeah. I certainly think that the creativity that I grew up with had a lot of influence, and it certainly affected the way I look at life.
But golf, people think of golf as structure and monotonous and doing the same thing, yet some of the greatest golfers in the world have unbelievable creativity. And so golf is this blend, at least from my experience working with golfers, is a little bit of both, right? The structure to be able to get your swing to be the same and be consistent and do the same thing every time, but to have the creativity to know if the ball is here or the ball is there, or there's a tree or there's wind, and how am I going to shape it? And that visualization and the creativity to see what the shot shape and how I want to do it, that blend is a fascinating blend. All right, I'm going to move on. Perfection or progression?
Progression.
And I knew that was going to be
100% progression. Forget perfection. Forget that whole idea of perfection, I think. I think that's a bad word in golf and in sports, unless you're a diver or a gymnast.
There's two words that come in mind when you think about golfers that I hear is they want to be consistent,
yeah,
and they strive for the perfect swing. Yet both are pretty unobtainable in golf.
There is a great quote in a book, a 1964 book called Search for the Perfect Swing, and it goes, the looking for the perfect swing is like looking for darkness with a flashlight. I thought it's pretty much right.
That's awesome. Resume or eulogy?
Do I have to die to have had a eulogy?
No, the idea of the eulogy being something different that they talk about than a resume.
Sure. Probably a eulogy.
Okay. Any idea why?
Well, I think that there's more to what somebody's done and what someone's influence has been, as opposed to sort of checking off a box, or, you know, I went to a certain school, or I had a certain certification behind my belt, but what did you do with that? Because I think a lot of people can show up and go through the motions, but not so many people can have the wherewithal to kind of put it together and to make things connect with people and have the relationships with people that actually kind of build an influential perspective.
Awesome. This generation or your parents' generation?
Well, this generation. I'm a progressive person, and I think that I like growth. I like new growth. I like change. I like advancement. So I think there's certainly areas of our parents' generation that that maybe are better than ours right now. Social media might be one of them. I mean, I think that it comes with a very, very sharp edge. So as much as we can connect with people now more than we ever can, it can be a real time suck. And I think people can get caught up with things instead of doing real life activities. So I think I think our generation comes with some pitfalls.
Sure. But you like the idea of the options that we have available, the progression that we
Absolutely.
Evaluations or descriptions?
Okay, so an evaluation is a judgment, and that's what I'm thinking of. And a description really could come from anybody without judgment. So I'm thinking a description.
Okay. Positive feedback or negative feedback as a coach to your athlete?
Well, this one's loaded. It's loaded for me because feedback has so many different modalities. So feedback could be so many different types of feedback and so many different uses of feedback and so many different reasons why how we use feedback. And feedback for me is such a humongous tool. And so I think of all feedback as positive because and even if I'm not giving it, that's a choice, right? If I set a bandwidth and that bandwidth is very narrow, I may not say anything unless I really need to. So, but that's a way of me giving feedback. But my answer definitely is positive. But I may give feedback in a way that that points out an area that needs to be improved. But I'm going to put it with a positive spin.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'll give a quick example.
Go for it.
So I have a bunch of kids that came to me yesterday, these 5 kids, and 4 of them had never really had any golf before, and they kind of into it, kind of not into it. And one of them was really having a tough time with the mechanics, and his brother was doing very well. And so instead of saying to him, you really need to bend over from the waist, we're putting, I said, I love the way your eyes are over the ball. You really have nice posture. Bam. What happens next? He's bent over.
Interesting.
So I think we can do a lot if you spin things in a positive way.
Awesome. Momentum or the moment?
Momentum. Okay, I can think of a lot of instances in sports as an athlete where it's the moment, there's a moment that's thrilling and kind of energizing, and there's adrenaline that comes from a moment. And so momentum is great and can carry, but there's always a moment where either you catch the ball or you don't. Either you flush it or you don't. You sink it or you don't. So for me, as an athlete, I want that moment. And I want to get to that moment.
Grit or grind?
Let's see. What's the difference between grit and grind?
So a lot of people think that they're the same thing. Here's how I interpret it. Golf, especially, people will say, I'm just grinding it out. Yeah. Oh, I struggled, but I grinded out a 73 or 74. To me, grinding is like tense. Like grinding is like, and you used the word grind even earlier. It's become we use it so regularly, especially in sports. To me, grind is a tense thing. Uh-huh. Grit is like, oh, I've got this. I'm going to get the next one.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm going to get the next one. So my interpretation is different, which is why I asked the question. And when I phrase it that way, I think it leans toward a certain answer.
Yeah, grit.
But I think people believe like I need to grind through something to get to where I want to go.
Yeah.
And I got to just pound balls and be out here and when it's 100 degrees or when it's raining and grind. To me, grit is like, I'm going to find another way to get to where I want to go. you've talked about the process, the journey, getting to another level and appreciating those things. I think a gritty person still focuses on that, but not so much in a grind manner.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my thought behind it.
Well, when you phrase it like this.
I know, now I really make it.
Grit, of course, grit. And I think when someone has an ability to shift gears into the sixth gear, that extra gear, I think of that as grit, or someone who's able to kind of keep on going when it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That would be grit, or bounce back.
For sure. Recovery, right?
Recovery,
resilience.
For sure. You know, stuff comes at you and it's not going your way, but you get back in.
Awesome.
You get back in it.
Liked or respected? And answer that as a coach.
Respected as a coach, I think, and I don't feel like people have to like me, but I take what I do really seriously, and my objectives are to help people play better golf, really, or to help them do what they want to do with golf. And so usually people want to like their coach, so I think that's plays a role, but I think respect is a more important word.
Think of this question more from an athlete standpoint. Love winning or hate losing?
I love winning. I love winning. I don't hate losing as much. I don't hate losing if I know that I played my guts out. But
you really care about the journey of how you do.
Yeah.
As much or if not more than what you do.
That's right.
Okay. Risk taker or rule follower?
Risk taker.
In a sport where rule following is super important.
Well, the rules are the rules. Yeah. So, I mean, put the rules aside.
Right.
I wouldn't go anywhere with the rules. I need someone.
You're not cheating, but
No.
you lean more toward risk taking because.
Well, I think risk taking if you want to push yourself, and I'm thinking of in a skill building sense. So you take risks because you want to get out of your comfort zone. And so if you never hit a 3-wood and suddenly you need a shot, you need that 3-wood shot, but you haven't ever hit it, then you haven't taken that risk, you're not going to get any better.
Sure.
And so you've got to be on that fine line of being uncomfortable, and I think that's where I think of risk as, a level of discomfort.
Balance or specific obsession?
Oh, where do you come up with this?
This is my brain. Welcome to my mind. This is what I think about every day when I go to bed at night. Balance or specific obsession? That's where I'm at.
Okay, so I'm a specific obsession person who, that's just who I am.
Meticulous.
I'm obsessed. Yeah, absolutely obsessed. Live, breathe, think, feel everything along an avenue until I feel like I've exhausted it. And I'm not, in fact, I had to make a New Year's resolution once that I would have a medium speed because it was all or nothing, full tilt or zero. And so medium speed was basically my way of balancing. So I think I need to blend in a little balance, but I'm so happy with the things that I've been able to do because I was so focused that I'm still going to say obsession.
Right. So it sounds like you would still say to get to where I am today and to get to where I want to go, I'm still going to be specifically obsessed, but I've got this little piece of balance that I'm trying to sprinkle in. But if I were to choose one or the other, you'd rather be specifically obsessed and strive for greatness than have balance and be mediocre.
Hands down.
Cool. Fear of failure or fearless?
Fearless. Fearless. Ooh, I hope I don't crash today. Ooh.
Disassociate from pressure or embrace it?
Embrace it.
And that goes with your sort of fearlessness.
Embrace it and like it and want it. I usually do better when people are watching.
Trust your head or your gut more?
Gut.
Sort of goes with the last two also, with this fearlessness and that idea of I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
Does that ever backfire?
Yeah. Yeah, go with your gut and then your ball's in the water.
Well, it's an interesting, golf is one of the few sports that rewards conservative play.
Kind Kind of, unless you're playing match play.
Right.
Or unless, in college golf, it rewards conservative play. Coach wants you to shoot a 71,
Sure.
not a 68, with the risk of shooting 78.
And junior golf too. If you're shooting par, you're winning tournaments. Or you're
Junior golf too,
competing
that's right. But if you want to play on tour, college golf's not going to help you to a certain degree. You've got to go for the jugular.
And have to learn how to shoot in the 60s.
Yes, that's right.
Such an interesting dynamic to see, because a lot of times we teach junior golfers to play the safe shot and they get rewarded. Here's a trophy when you play safe. But if their long-term goal is to play professionally, they might want to develop that habit a little sooner.
Yeah, it's a fine line.
Awesome.
It's a fine line.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Surface. Trillium is someone who I've gotten to know over the years, and we've shared a lot of different clients. And I really enjoy collaborating with her when we're sharing clients, and she's even helped me a little bit with my golf game. I'm not going to say that you helped me that much because it's not going to look good for you. But she's someone I certainly trust, and you have a special way of connecting with your golfers, and there's always a smile on your face, which I think that positive energy is really great to be around. So thank you for joining us for Beyond the Surface, and appreciate it.